We've grown used to famous labels. We don't even think about it. We know what to expect. But there was a time when the art of marketing was more artistic, no less psychological. The images were designed to satisfy something in the consumer's psyche. Wayne Wilson of the Kelowna Museum invites us to come back with him to the first half of the 20th century to examine the business of marketing as it was practiced by the orchard industry of the Okanagan. Join me in an apple and sit back and enjoy this edition of Pioneers and Places. Welcome to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with my storyteller for this evening, Wayne Wilson, the curator of the Kelowna Museum. And really the subject of tonight's program is how the orchard industry of British Columbia managed to establish its image in the world. And it had a pretty great image in the world, didn't it?
Spectacular.
And still does.
It does.
Yeah.
We sell tree fruits from this valley worldwide.
And it's had its start at the beginning, would you say, at the beginning of the 20th century?
A little over 100 years ago, 1901, the Fruit Marks Act, provincial act came out and said, look, if you're going to sell products in British Columbia in closed containers, you need to have at least some basic information on the outside of the box. So you had to have things like the name of the grower, where they came from, what was inside, the quality of the fruit, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And they had to be stamped on the outside of the box, so whether that was butter or what have you. And
This is what it was done.
exactly. This is the legal information. So you've got that it's Canadian apples.
Yeah.
You've got a brand name, which begins to get at where we're going to go with today's talk on the apple box labels. But it was packed and shipped by, in this case, Salmon Arm Farmers Exchange, and they're actually in Salmon Arm. You had that it was delicious apples across the top here. There were 138 apples in the box, and it was C grade. In this case, packed by number 40.
And that's pretty standard business-like, not a lot of art involved.
No, it began to get some artwork.
Yeah.
You can see a couple of colors emerging. Some of the logos that were used in the apple box labels, the O here for Okanagan and the K for Kootenay.
Oh, so that wasn't just Okanagan. The K stood for something separate.
Oh yeah, yeah. O for Okanagan and K for Kootenay. And of course, it just happened that it was a good bit of subliminal advertising as well. It's okay.
Perfect. It's okay. That's not bad. And this...
Eat More brand out of Bowman's up in Vernon area. Great label. Nice little shield, almost like a seal of approval.
I notice that there's some standardization, and when we take a look at that box out there, that also tells us this is the size of the box that is associated with British Columbia apples.
It's a standard, and it was used in BC, used in Washington State, and one of the ways, I guess, that you can tell that you've got one of those original boxes is the wood that was actually used in them. You know, we didn't use barrels out here. That was an Eastern thing.
Yeah.
We used wooden apple boxes, and of course, BC, out in the West, we got lots of wood, so there were box factories all over the place, up and down this valley, making literally hundreds of thousands of boxes every year.
And they were the way they were. Now, this is a replica
That's
box.
right. That's right.
And why is it a replica?
You notice the slats on the sides here are in two pieces. So what they used instead...
They weren't supposed to have that edge there because that would help bruise the apples,
That's right.
I understand.
That's right.
So that is an original veneer.
This is the wood that was cut. It's planed, smooth on one side, and then a bandsaw would split it down the middle.
That is an artifact from the day. You know, if I found some bolts of wood like that, I would not immediately know that they were for making apple boxes.
That's right.
That has to be as rare as hen's teeth.
We've got a few bundles of these actually still in their banding at the Orchard Museum.
Now, you have some pictures there too of just how massive, I don't know, how enthusiastic the Okanagan was at getting its produce on the market worldwide. Where are those photographs taken?
These are from fruit shows. We have one from Vancouver. This is an example of that.
Look at
That kind of fruit show. This is a full railway car of apple boxes, 600 apple boxes full of Jonathan apples at an apple show. I believe it's 1908 in Vancouver. And here are a couple of pieces from the Imperial Fruit Show in Manchester, England in 1923. You can see the displays of apples all out for inspection. And these are the awards that were won, in this case, by Associated Growers of BC. We'll be getting to labels, and there you can see the OK brand there that we were talking about.
Look at this. This is a gold-washed sterling silver cup, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And very ornate beast.
The agents general from Nova Scotia, Quebec, British Columbia, and Ontario got together and offered this as a prize for the British Empire for the best dessert apple championship. And if you're careful and you can look at the label on it from 1924 and 25 and 26, BC and the Empire, we're the only ones that ever won it.
So we get to keep it.
Well, the popular story is that BC won it so many times they just decided you may as well give it to BC because no one else is going to win it anyways.
Grab that poster behind you there, because when did you encounter this piece of work?
Well, the trophy's been in our collection for, in fact, I don't know how long. But a few years after we opened the Orchard Museum, someone came in and said, I just found this in a magazine from 1928. And the Western Home Monthly in September 1928 had an ad for Associated Growers, and there's the Agents General's trophy, and a comment about just the OK trademark and how powerful a brand it was. So these are both now on display at the Orchard Museum.
I just can't, I have to read this because somebody deserves to either be beaten or awarded for this
Purple
particular
prose.
Purple prose. In the orchard valleys of British Columbia, nature, in her sweetest mood, pours endless sunlight through glorious blue heavens and fills the mountain streams to overflowing, coaxing every tree to yield an abundance of tempting, rosy-cheeked apples. The choicest of these fruits comes to you in many varieties under the OK trademark.
You bet. You bet. Now, wouldn't you buy those apples?
I'd buy those in a second.
You bet.
But art, even greater art, came into being pretty soon, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment, okay?
We'll get to that.
Back with Wayne Wilson and the art of marketing the Okanagan apple right after these words. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts talking with Wayne Wilson of the Kelowna Museum about apple advertising, about forming a place in the world for the Okanagan produce and the apples. And when we take a look at the artwork, Wayne, of the labels that went into this, I mean, it's lovely to look at, but for a historian, it is a whole other thing, isn't it? You're looking for patterns and motivation.
No, I think advertising today, people don't do advertising for no reason. There are values and attitudes and perceptions behind why we do things, and I think that in that short span of 40 to 50 years that we have of the box labels out there, I think that you can look at them and use them as cues to what people were thinking at the time. And so we've got, from about World War I is when we started seeing tree fruit labels, box labels used in British Columbia.
Now, I would just imagine that the first label would be an apple tree with a big apple on it. I'd be wrong.
Well, no, the provincial government at the time, 1913 is the earliest reference that I can find actually to paper labels. And it's a government document, and what they're doing is they're saying to British Columbia growers, there's something happening in Washington State. These Washington growers are putting paper labels on the end of their boxes to attract the consumer's eye. In fact, Yakima growers have got a great big letter Y with different colors for the different grades of apples. Us BC growers should be doing the same as well. So there's the first reference. That's 1913. The first label that we know of that we can actually date, the earliest label, is 1917 because it says on it, copyright 1917. Yeah. It's Bulldog brand from the Mutual Fruit Company, and it had a companion label. And that companion label is the Terrier brand.
What's with the dogs?
To have something like terrier and bulldog, pretty powerful British images,
Yeah.
is really not unreasonable.
So that label dates back to 1917.
This is probably
approximately.
World War I-ish, yes.
And you've also got sort of the last of the labels there.
Okay, this one dates to 1961, BC Fruit Shippers out of Oliver and Vernon, and it combines some of the elements that we'll be looking at in just a moment here. But the leaf
Yep.
is still used today
Yep.
by BC Tree Fruits for marketing those apples.
But it looks pretty tame compared to some of the stuff
Oh,
that
yeah.
we see here.
Oh, yeah.
Start showing me this.
Okay.
Now, this sort of harkens back to the Yakima scenario, a simple, big initial to tell you where you're getting this from.
It does. When you talked about patterns, and
Yeah.
as a geographer, that's what geography is about, is recognizing patterns. So what I did with all of these labels, I took photos of every label and I laid them out on the floor and said, a very simple theoretical question: are there any patterns here? And I think there are 5 major sets of design elements here. And one is simple logos. This interwoven B and letter C, in this
Yep.
case for Seton Fruit.
Yep.
We know that this is from the 1930s because this is a preferred tariff designation to get your fruit into Britain. So if you were a grower from South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, one of the Commonwealth countries, you had preference in getting your fruit into Great Britain. From America, you couldn't. From South America, etc. So while there is no hard chronology on the labels out there, we can begin to date them by those little cues and clues. The Empire Star, we know when the Seton Fruit Company was in existence, so we can begin to date them. There's our OK. O for Okanagan and K for Kootenai, with this banner sweeping across the top.
Yeah.
And little things.
I note that
a
there's-
little seal of approval. you
Yeah.
know?
I note that there's no Empire Star on that one.
No, this is probably before that. This is probably
That's
from the
how-
1920s.
That's how old that is.
Yep.
Okay.
A little more modern. This is probably from the 1950s. Southern Cooperative Exchange out of Oliver. Great big logo type.
Yeah. And look at these are quite proud initials. What are they? Monograms.
That's right. And the advertising notion behind a simple logo is that it's bright and it's bold.
Yeah.
You want to catch the consumer's eye, and you do that with bright colors and bold images.
Kidston Orchards, JK, Jamie Kidston,
That's
right
right.
there, eh?
Yeah. Still growing apples today.
Now
Again,
this one's in plastic because it's very fragile, and you may find fragile things like this at home. It still makes them
absolutely.
extremely valuable artifacts.
Absolutely. Here's one that combines kind of cultural connections with British Empire here,
Yeah.
with the simple logo type of Okanagan Packers out of Kelowna.
Seal of quality, always part of this. And now, with all those colorful labels, this one kind of is a minimalist, but you
it's
found-
bold.
It's bold, and it also has another meaning to
Well,
it.
from what I was told, the family who owned the Coldstream Ranch at the time also owned Black and White Scotch manufacturing.
It all makes sense
distillery.
if you're selling your apples to Scotland.
Use
Okay,
the
so
same.
that's the bold, give me an initial I can deal with
That's
technique.
right. That's right.
Next step.
Okay. The next set of labels I call a set of pioneer images.
Yeah.
And for the consumer of the day, I think if you ask them, what is the West? In terms of pioneer setting, what's the West?
Yeah.
They would say the West is full of covered wagons, Indians in feather headdresses, full of buffalo. That's the kind of image that is there.
deal them
and
out.
so why not give them that? Give the consumer what they know. People, advertisers do it today as well. So they're out of Karamias is the Conestoga wagon.
Yep. There's not a lot of buffalo in this herd.
No, but why not give it to them?
That's right.
Big Chief brand.
Now that's more of a prairie headdress
Absolutely.
for Indian people, but it served to represent Canada overseas.
They're talking about the generic West. What is it? And there it is. An earlier version of that was the Kalamalka brand.
Yeah. And now here's a nice little combination thing.
That's right.
This is a transitional piece for you
It is.
geographers.
Here's the that image of this in native almost always in profile.
Yeah.
The feathered headdress, often sitting on a horse. But that's combined with this other landscape image that is really pretty accurate representation of the Creston Valley. In fact, I was doing a slideshow of these one time, and an elderly lady came up and said, "That's the highway in Creston." She knew exactly where it was.
So
nice
that
combination.
An artist went there and captured that for that particular
Quite probably, or
purpose.
worked off of a photo.
Right.
So there's a kind of a romantic image of what the West is.
Yeah.
There's also, I think, a set of of pioneer images that more accurately represents the Okanagan Valley. And at the turn of the century, there were psychology of advertising books. And one of the pitches in there is called the Appeal to the Hunter pitch. Now, if you go back into diaries and letters from the Okanagan Valley, a lot of British Columbia, this was a hunter's paradise here. Lady Aberdeen's journal from the 1890s, they got here the next morning, they went on a bear hunt. You could go out and there were deer to hunt and grouse, and it was just that sort of thing. And it really is an accurate representation of the lifestyle that was here. And we know that because people wrote about it. You can go hunting for caribou here.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't have caribou in the Okanagan, but it's that image of that appeal to the hunter. The next set of labels deals with the physical landscape of the place. What does the place look like? So here are a couple of labels. We have one from the 1920s and one from the 1930s. And here in the back, you've got this kind of bucolic setting in the foreground, but in the background are these majestic snow-covered peaks that just didn't exist here.
No.
But the consumer thinks they do, so why not give it to them? There's the romantic image of the West.
Yeah.
I think there's a set of images that really more accurately represents the West. And we begin with Summerland brand. And I'm beginning to think with this label that one of the ways that these lithography companies in Vancouver got their ideas is that they went to the packing houses to sell their wares. And I bet you the packing house manager said, here's a photo. See if you can work that photo into the label.
Well, look at is that
It is,
Peachland?
that's Summerland.
Summerland, Lower Summerland.
It's
that's
exactly.
right.
The wharf is here.
There's the wharf.
Landscape. Some of these labels are extra green. Well,
Yeah.
this is not. This is a dry landscape with a rolling upland to it, not the majestic peaks. A really accurate representation.
Good.
Another one that I think exactly the same thing happened. There's some. You have to give some deference to cartographers in those days. Kelowna is bigger than Vancouver. But up in the top right-hand corner is this little vignette, and here's a photo from probably early 1920s of looking down from the Kalo orchards. There's Mount Boucherie, there's Mount Boucherie. There's Okanagan Lake, there it is. The symmetric rows of trees all in the foreground. Really a really wonderful way of saying, let's give some accurate representation of where we are, where this fruit comes from. Orchard brand, a little bit too green perhaps, and you can see that perhaps the Monachees in the background, but the dominant character is these lower rolling hills.
What's the deal with Vikings? Now
well,
I can see a variety of things. You put this into what kind of a category?
Well, this is Wayne's catch-all category that I really call exotica. And again, a lot of marketing for different products use exotic images, and the tree fruit industry is no different. We're part of a larger set of thinking on how you get your product out there. So why not use some of those exotic images? So we have Viking brand and Ericsson brand.
Okay.
Old Gold brand with this Spanish galleon there and the treasure box out front. And of course, what are the apples in? A treasure box.
Exactly right.
I really believe that there's some subliminal advertising going on here. Monastery brand. And of course, we grow heavenly apples here, Mike.
You're starting to believe your own stuff here.
What can I say?
And this must have been as far out as things got.
If no one has seen Ogopogo, the artists knew what he looked like. And from the 1930s, a C-grade box label of Ogopogo. We know Ogopogo is a fruitarian now, only eating apples.
Now, do we have any knowledge of the reaction of people to these boxes? I mean, would children love this and mothers hate it? I mean, do we have any kind of...
No, probably the best reaction that I get when at the Orchard Museum is people come in and we have a wall of these box labels to start your tour of the Orchard Museum, and people stand there and reminisce how they remember these labels as children.
Finally, you've got just the appeal to the mother Commonwealth.
Exactly. As I said at the beginning, the Okanagan tree fruit industry, its strongest support financially and in terms of labor and getting things done was the British. As I say, 1911, 1921, 80% of the Okanagan Valley was British by birth or British by descent. And the export market, the lucrative export market by and far, was Great Britain. So to put those two together in marketing pitches is really not an unreasonable place to go. So we've got Lion brand. Now there was an earlier version of this from the 1920s, but this is from the 30s. And this letter A, One of the graphic artists that I worked with told me that that comes from a World's Fair. Typography changes over the years, and the typography we have now didn't exist 30 years ago, 40
That
years
font
ago.
was a popular font of that era.
Exactly. So we begin to date when, although there are no dates on them,
Yeah.
we can begin to date them with these little cues, when the company existed, little things like that. And finally, of course, a pretty powerful British Isles connection with McDougall Export, the McDougall family, still in Kelowna here, and Crown Fruit Company. Now, McDougall would have shipped, would have been the packing house, and he would have ordered tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of these labels, and this would have been empty. And locally, the local printing company would have put in Crown Fruit Company, Rowcliffe Company, etc., so that you could have the shipping company and the fruit packing house that it came from. So there are several Thistle brand labels out there, all with different names stripped in at the bottom here by the printer.
And
So,
it's all gone now to the historians.
or your kitchen wall.
Or your kitchen wall.
Yeah.
We're coming back after this break to talk about what happened to the artwork of the box label right after these words. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts and Wayne Wilson talking about the art of selling Okanagan apples. And in the late 50s, with the transition from wooden boxes to cardboard, there must be just hundreds of thousands of unused apple labels sitting around out there with no place to go because they weren't used.
Well, they ended up being used as art paper, and they were given to schools. We are still finding labels that we have never seen before. There are private collectors and museums out there that are still coming across labels, a wonderful array of, a legacy, really, of the tree fruit industry, and a pretty dazzling legacy at that.
But the stories of the people who design these labels, they're mystery people.
You know, graphic artists generally are. You never know who designed them. In all of this research, I found one graphic artist who is still alive, started as Bullman's Litho in 1937, sharpening pencils, and became the head of design for Grant Mann Litho. But he really couldn't remember just, you know, where the ideas came from. He said they borrowed a lot from the United States. But you know, that's the reality of graphic arts in advertising, is the artists are a pretty rare bunch and unknown.
The amazing thing is, I mean, that's what wineries are doing today, is they're using the same images
That's right.
that the fruit industry used, and now they're using those images to sell their wines.
It is. There are patterns and cycles to all of this thing. It's all about patterns and trying to recognize the patterns that are there.
If we're smart, we'll remember the graphic artist who created the label
That's right.
for the various wines of the Okanagan, and then save you the trouble.
And I'll be back in 50 years, and we'll do this again with wine labels.
Wayne Wilson, thank you very much for being here today. What
Thank
an
you.
interesting and artistic look at the orchard industry of the Okanagan. Thank you for being here. We'll see you again next time on Pioneers and Places.